Well, good morning, Way Church. Love to see your smiling faces. You are so awake and alert and alive, and I love that. My name is Kiley, Skor, and my husband and I, you may or may not have seen us here a couple of times. We work with the larger family of churches that you're part of, which means we've had kind of an inside track at being able to watch before the Way Church was here. It's been so exciting just to watch your story, to be a part of it along the way, and since day one, we've just been watching God move, watching God change lives. We love it. We're not here as often as we would like, but we are big fans of the Way Church. So it's awesome to be here with you this morning. As the bumper was showing, you're in the middle of a series called Against All Odds. And I love this series because it's such an intensely personal series. I love how it talks about the ways that God interacted with people when he was here physically on earth and how those ways can transmit to us. They're very personal things that they experienced at that point in time that we experience now. And so I'm excited to be able to walk this path with you this morning. And I want to start off by asking a question. Hopefully I'm not the only one in the room that feels this way. So those of you in the room who are adults, how many of you just kind of had this sense that at some point in time, your experience gets bigger, the concerns and frustrations get smaller because you know more what to do? Like there's this tipping point. When I was younger, I thought there's got to be this tipping point when you hit that age and yeah, it's tough. Things are new. I've been here, done this, know that. Any of you kind of thought that when you were young? Anybody like me that all of a sudden you're going, why am I the adult in the room? I think that tipping point, at least from the time when I was 20, that tipping point age has come and gone and been in my rearview mirror. And somehow I still half the time feel like a 20-year-old trying to figure it out, you know? It's like, man, howdy, I'm older than my parents were when I thought they knew a lot of stuff. So speaking of my parents, I did grow up with parents who generally were pretty wise people. I know not everybody gets that opportunity or gets that blessing in their life for sure, but my parents aren't perfect, never pretended to be perfect, and they did admit that, you know, half the time you're kind of making stuff up. My mom's favorite statement, which I love, was she would say, you know, you're going to have to be patient with me because I've never raised you before. So wise woman. As I said, my mom's a wise woman. My mom is also one of those intuitive people. Like she knows. You know, you've met those people? Like they just know stuff. They know everything. When my husband and I were dating, usually when I was younger, guys, oh, we're losing it. If they met my parents, they were concerned about my dad because he's kind of quiet. My husband, I knew he was the one when he said, I was not worried in the least about your dad. Your mom terrified me because she knows. I'm like, oh, he gets it. He gets it. So she's a very intuitive person. She's pretty good at connecting life lessons with practical situations. She had pretty good advice for me growing up. And in a lot of ways, I am my mother's daughter. Like probably of the three of us girls, she and I are the most alike. And so my thought was, you know, I mean, we're the same for the good or the bad. My thought was, she is such a capable person that clearly by the time I hit 30, or if we're going to be generous, by the time I hit 40, surely I would have this whole tool belt of experience and wisdom that she carried around. And, you know, I didn't expect life to be easy. I mean, you're a little naive if you think everything's going to be easy and go the way you want it to. But my thought was, I'll be equipped. I'll know, generally speaking, what to do in these situations. I'll have experienced more. You know, you walk into college going, okay, I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with life and survive midterms, because midterms are always worse than finals. But you think, you know, I'll get through this. I'll have myself kind of figured out. Then you're in that relationship stage and you're like, once I get through, that's a big decision. This is a big time in my life. Then you get married and it's like, figuring out this whole newlywed thing. This is way different than I kind of thought it would be. And then you have kids. And I don't know about you, we have 2 boys. They were not good sleepers, they were not good eaters, and they were generally not cooperative about an awful lot of things. It was a challenge that kept me on my feet. But, the thought was, okay, life's not gonna be easy, but there will come that someday moment, right? That moment when, we're in the house that we've worked towards getting into. That moment when we don't have to worry about having a buffer if the car goes down. That moment when my kids sleep through the night, which means I get to sleep through the night again. Sleep's a big deal to me. It is a big deal to me. That moment when you think, I'll finally be able to go places without getting a babysitter for my kids, and they'll be more independent. And, life's going to get to a point where there's kind of this equilibrium that'll settle in, and those uncertainties, those challenges, all of that stuff will be a little bit behind me. I'll have a complete tool belt of life skills. I'll have figured out all of these things, and it's going to be way easier. Yeah. So I've been married 31 years to the same guy, which that's not always a given. So we've been married 31 years. My boys are now 23 and almost 27. They are not only out of high school, they are out of college. Their sleeping, eating habits are their own business, none of my business. They can take care of that all on their own. I don't need to worry about it. It's fantastic. Over the years, I personally have moved 12 different times, several states in the US, one province in Canada. We've bought 5 houses in 4 different states. They do things differently in different states, so that's a lot to navigate. 4 of those houses we have sold. And don't even get me started. I'm not a car person. Don't even get me started on the number of cars we've bought and sold and fixed and hated and gotten stranded, all the things, all of the things. And yet, even though I feel like there's enough life under my belt, and I do know some things I didn't know when I was 20, but a lot of times I do just kind of feel like I'm still a 20-year-old kind of figuring it out. Like I said, when did I become the adult in the room? That's weird. I think for all of us, no matter what age you are, no matter where you are income-wise, your relational status, whether you have kids or you don't have kids, we have that a lot in common. I mean, there's even a phrase for it. It's called the imposter syndrome. That idea that you're just kind of walking through life, hoping you're doing okay, faking it, and you're like one bad decision away from them recognizing that she doesn't have any idea what she's doing and she's making this up completely on the fly. I think it also doesn't help that over the past couple of decades, in addition to trying to manage our image in person and face-to-face, and in some of these situations, we now have the lovely web to manage of managing both an in-person and face-to-face image, as well as an online image, and trying to figure out, how do I do that healthily? And there's so many different ways, comparing yourself against other people and struggling with who we are. And I think we often feel like I should have it all together. But I feel like I'm just like 1 or maybe 2 stages away from figuring it out. Like I said, once that next step hits, when I have the career that I've been wanting to, when I get the job that has a decent salary, when we get to that dream house, when my kids are more independent, there's always like a next stage that it's once I get to there, then I'll have it made. But somehow we never quite get there. A lot of times we just manage life. Basically what we're doing is we're never really addressing our issues, and we never take the time to get past that moment when we're mostly just living in reaction to what happens to us and what happens around us. So you saw in the bumper and on the screens, we're walking through a series called Against All Odds. And I love this series because it's such a personal series. This moment where Jesus interacted with people. This morning, we're going to look at a story found in John chapter 5. So before we jump into walking through that, let's read that together. It says, "Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool." The sheep gate would have been a gate that went into the temple. So this is where this is located, "which in Aramaic is called Bethesda. And here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One of the ones who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he'd been in this condition for a long time, he asked him," we say this together as waymakers, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me in the pool. And when the water is stirred, while I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." And at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was the Sabbath. It's just a side note, the Sabbath was a holy day of rest. And this was a festival Sabbath, so it was a special high holy day of rest. "The law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.' So they asked him, 'Who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?' The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. And later Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, 'See, you're well again.'" Let's say this together. "Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." So let's take apart the story and just kind of see what are the elements that are happening here. I think first of all, it's important for you to understand, we live here in the Southwest, and a lot of the names in California and in our surrounding areas. I'm going to switch over to a different mic here so it's not cutting out on me. So we live here in the Southwest, where a lot of names mean something in Spanish. And unless you understand Spanish, although some people, you kind of know some of it, but it's just San Diego, it's LA, Los Angeles, but it actually means something. It's in a different language and it means something. This pool, the Pool of Bethesda, was kind of one of those places. The name Bethesda actually meant something. And so this place was actually called the House of Mercy or Grace. Like, really? We find this irony in this story. Maybe it was a place of mercy and grace for other people, but it wasn't for this guy. He had been living here, the irony, living in the house of mercy or grace for 38 long years. And he had received neither mercy nor grace. He didn't receive it from those around him. He hadn't received it conceivably from his family. It appeared and it seemed like he hadn't even received mercy or grace from God himself. This was a spot that a lot of sick people chose because there was kind of a legend about the place. There was a pool of water there. And every so often, we don't know how often, but every so often the water would stir. It would be moved. And the legend behind it was that there was an angel that stirred the water. And if you were the first one to get into the water after the water was stirred, you'd be healed. So you can see why it was a popular place for people who needed to be healed. This man had spent 38 years with this front row seat to mercy and grace and healing without ever experiencing it for himself. And he had all the right reasons holding him back. It's not like it was for lack of trying. He was too slow, and he had no one to help him into the water. I mean, the man was paralyzed, after all. He waited presumably day after day with the expectation that one of these days the water's going to stir, and maybe today will be my day. Maybe today I can get past the stage that I'm in and I can hit that next stage, the stage where I'm whole, the stage of healing. But like God often does, his day of healing and wholeness came completely differently than he expected. It had nothing to do with the water. In verse 6, it says, Jesus saw him lying there. And if you're like me, you kind of gloss over that word saw. It's like, Jesus was walking through. He glances around the group. He sees all the people. He saw this man. But the word that is used for Jesus seeing him is different than just glancing over. Okay, so have you ever been, like you're at Fry's, you're at Walmart, you're at Target, and somebody's like staring at you? And maybe I'm the only one for this. You have that panic moment where you're like, do I know them? I don't think I know them. Do I have something in my teeth? Did I forget to put pants on? Why are they staring at me? I don't really understand this. The point of Jesus seeing him, it was one of those things where he was intently staring at him. He didn't just glance his way. He was studying him. He was looking at him. He was truly, fully seeing him. It was a deep, deep level of awareness. He was surrounded by all these sick people in that space, but he saw him. It was intentional, it was intense, and it was a transformational moment. And you think about it, for this man, possibly for the first time in decades, somebody noticed him, somebody cared about him, somebody took the time to look more than just a quick glance in his direction. At that moment, Jesus asked him the $1 million question, the question we're asking this morning: do you want to get well? Kind of seems like a no-brainer question. The guy's got to be going, are you kidding? You see where I am. Of course I want to get well. But I think a deeper question Jesus was asking him is, are you willing to be made whole? Are you willing to leave behind these 38 years of begging that has become your entire life and your entire substance? Are you willing to leave behind 38 years of just figuring out how to manage and how to live this way? It was a half life, but it was something he knew. It was something he was familiar with. Are you willing to leave behind the 38 years that you've been able to hide behind your infirmity, that you've been able to live with a legitimate, even though it's a very painful, excuse for where you are? Are you willing to leave behind spending 38 years in this one space and this one place? And probably even behind those questions, there's some bigger questions. Are you willing to change everything? A question we'll see in a little bit here: are you willing to go and sin no more? And are you willing to trust me when everything around you is unknown and new and unfamiliar? You would think, I don't know how I'd react. You don't know how you'd react till you're in that situation. But you would think he'd be like, well, yeah, let's do this. Absolutely. Tell me what to do. Let's go. And yet that was not his response. His response was a lot of excuses based on his limited view. You almost feel this defensiveness and this desperation in the tone of his voice. I have no friends to help me. I have tried, but I can't make it to the water in time. I never make it. Everybody else always makes it first. This is my only option for healing, and I have continually watched it ripped from my grasp for decades. When you hear the sense of, I have tried and tried and tried. I'm not just laying here being passive. I have tried. And Jesus didn't really say much about that. His response was simply, pick up your mat and walk. Which, again, with where he is, wouldn't you think he'd be like, if I could do that, why would I be here? But Jesus was asking for a partnership. There was a question found in this command: will you do what I ask you to do? Will you pick up your mat and walk? Will you turn around? Will you change your mind? Will you trust my words? There's another element involved in that too. Picking up his mat and walking comes with a cost that we don't often see. I mentioned that it was the Sabbath, which was a day of rest, and this was a special Sabbath because it was part of a festival. And the religious leaders at the time kind of built these gate laws around the laws so that not only would you not break the laws, you would like not even get close, these 6-foot fences back behind of the laws. And one of those laws was it was very specific about what was considered work on the Sabbath, and there was a penalty for working on the Sabbath. They had all sorts of weird rules about what it meant to work that day. So even if this man was able to do what he's not able to do for 38 years, even that ludicrous thought aside, if he was able to pick up his mat and walk, then he's breaking the Sabbath. He's breaking the law. Jesus is asking him to break the rules. Obeying Jesus freed him from everything, but there was a little bit of risk behind it. And possibly it could be a high cost, because the punishment for that wasn't just a slap on the hand. It could possibly mean more physical pain, as if this man hadn't experienced enough. But he chose to take that risk, and he chose to do it. And the thing that I love about this, so this man who's been sick for 38 years, he's been paralyzed. He does the unthinkable. He does something that you can't imagine he would do. And yet we see in this passage, they don't make a big deal out of it. There's no fanfare. Jesus disappears into the crowd. There's no big hoopla. There's no applause. When it happens, Jesus is not like, "You're welcome. Here I am. I did that. Yes, yes, hold the applause." Nothing like that. There was no spectacle, no applause. We just see this man's life set free. There was drama right here in an ordinary moment. Later on, through this passage, we find another encounter between this man and Jesus. Jesus finds him in the temple, which again, another side note, this man had been healed. He's living right next to the temple. And what did he do for his first act as a whole person, as a freed man, as a healed man? He didn't know who Jesus was. He didn't know who had healed him. But he did know that God is the one who heals. And his first act as a whole man was to thank God, to go to the temple. And while he was there, he bumped into Jesus. He didn't know who Jesus was. He had not heard the stories. I mean, he'd been living in this completely isolated life. He hadn't seen Jesus' miracles, but he still knew that God was the one who'd healed him. So when he runs into Jesus, Jesus pointed out the obvious. He says, "Oh, look, you're well." Really? Didn't notice. Yes, I am well. The obvious right there. But he followed it up with a statement that honestly feels really harsh to our ears. He simply said, "Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." Really? There's a truth behind that statement, though. This man had been given wholeness, not just physical health. He'd been given wholeness. He was given back his life, and he chose to leave behind the mess that was familiar for him, for the joy that he did not know. And the former question, this statement actually connects with that former question: do you want to get well? Do you want to be well? He was saying, will you be made whole? I don't just want to heal your physical body. This isn't just a passive assent. I want to know if there's a determination that comes with the cost. Are you passionate about this? Do you really want to leave behind that mess? Do you want to be whole in more than just your body? That from here on out, everything's different. Everything changes. So that brings us to the question Jesus asked. This is a question I want to ask this morning. Do you want to get well? Are you passionate about this? Do you want to leave behind the mess? Will you be made whole? I think it's so easy for us to not pay attention to what's been going on inside of us, what's holding us back, to our disabilities, our dysfunctions. And we don't recognize the fact that God is here to make us whole, to heal us, to change us from the inside out. And I think sometimes we have these questions that we don't really admit out loud, even to ourselves. You know, sometimes you have these little life stories that run through your head, ways of doing things that you've always done and you've never really challenged, you've never really thought about, patterns of thinking that you've never really challenged, you've never really thought about. That's just the way life is, but you've never thought about, is that really the way life is? And I think some of the things that we struggle with is, so if I'm not sick, then who am I? You know, it becomes our identity. We wrap up our identity and our coping methods in our dysfunction. Like, this is just how I do life. This is how I know to do things. This is what I do. And if I'm not sick and if I don't need care, like, does that mean I'm going to be unseen? Like, I don't matter anymore? Like, I just have to push through and do all the things and burn myself out? Our sickness becomes our identity. And I'm not just talking about physical ailments. Actually, we're held up a lot more by our emotional and mental and spiritual dysfunctions. They hold us back so much more from connecting with God and with other people. And so what Jesus did and said for this man rings true for us today. So let's walk through that. First, you have to remember that just like Jesus saw this man, Jesus sees you. He doesn't just glance at you. He doesn't glance by you looking at somebody else who's smarter or brighter or better or more capable, had a better background, makes more money, lives in a better place. Jesus sees you. He studied you. He knows you from the inside out. He knows things about you you do not know about you. He has a doctorate times a million in the art of you. He knows you. He knows your pain, and he knows how long you've struggled. He knows your story. He knows what's been done to you. He knows what you've done to others. But he doesn't stop there. Just leaving you there isn't enough. Like this man, Jesus asks if you want to get well. I mean, that's a fair question. That is a fair question. So this morning, just a little bit of full disclosure, I'm going to be very vulnerable about the last couple of years in my life, but it connects so well with this. I've walked through some really rough things, and they were a long time coming, but a couple of years ago, it kind of hit ahead. There was a moment where I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't pass it off as, I'll just cope, we'll figure it out, we just work through here. And so the last couple of years have been walking through a lot of rough stuff. And when that moment hit, one of the things that instigated it was, I felt like Jesus was saying, do you want to get well? Do you want to get over this? Do you want to move past this? And I had to say, even though it wasn't a conscious thing on my mind, no, I don't. I haven't wanted to get well. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. And frankly, you have all of these reasons and excuses and things that were behind it. But at the core of it, it means being vulnerable. That means admitting the fact that I can be very prideful and I don't really want people to know those things about me. I don't want anybody to know those things about me. I don't want to know those things about me. I don't want to face that. I don't want to have to be in a place where I recognize that I want to control everything and I'm not trusting in the way that I feel like I am. We've got to face that question. Do you want to get well? And just like this man, Jesus tells you to do something that costs. And guess what? Walking through this the last couple of years, I was not wrong. It has cost. It does take energy. It takes intentionality. It takes vulnerability. And like I said, I've had to address my own pride. I've had to face things about myself I didn't want to hear. I've had to address the fact that I tend to be very self-reliant. that there's some of these false narratives that I've never really pulled out and actually faced or investigated. It's meant meeting with a counselor who asks me questions that I don't even think to ask, who sees things in me I don't even think are there. It's meant letting other people around me, sometimes even people I don't really know that well, pray over me or say things to me because I've opened myself up to being vulnerable and to hearing that from them, letting them speak God's word into my life. Again, being vulnerable, experiencing humility, crying, grieving things that I've felt like weren't worth grieving, and recognizing, oh, those are things that God really just wants to sit down and cry with me over. To get better, to change, we have to take these steps to view things differently. God made us, and He knows the way that we work best. And frankly, walking through that has meant changing how I interact with God. Not that spiritual disciplines that I was doing are wrong, but they were comfortable and familiar. And it's taken people speaking into my life and suggesting that I do some spiritual disciplines that frankly are out of my comfort zone. But they put me in a better place to hear from God. They put me in a better place to not control and shift the course of how He wants to work in my life and what He wants to say. But we're not going to stop there, because just like this man at the end of the story, we see